Finally, at a time when global sentiment is against China, India's move against Chinese aggression will be very closely watched by world leaders. Our diplomatic and military moves have made it abundantly clear we won't take Chinese aggression lying down. So here is how India is staring back, and then we look at what the military scenarios can be in the coming few weeks and days. Let's debate.
A 41-day standoff in the Galwan Valley that culminated into a violent face-off. On the 15th of June, Colonel B. Santosh Babu, commanding officer of 16 Bihar Regiment, along with 19 Indian Army soldiers, were martyred in a hand-to-hand combat with the Chinese troops when they were asked to adhere to the June 6th agreement.
When the commanding officer of the Bihar regiment, very important to point out significance of the commanding officer actually going in. He could have sent someone with lower rank to go and perhaps remind the Chinese, but keeping in mind the sensitivity, the sensibility, you had the commanding officer actually going to the Chinese camp and telling them that they need to back off because that's what the agreement was. But what really happened? In the next couple of hours, we are given to understand that Chinese responded by aggression in the manner that there was even stone pelting. In fact, this is what I'm being told, that there was stone pelting that took place where the commanding officer was grievously injured.
India has stood its ground on the construction of the DSDB road, a crucial infrastructure project on the Indian side of the line of actual control.
This is a crucial border infrastructure project, which I've already told you, 255 kilometers of road from, you see, from Leh, it goes to Durbuk, and then it goes to DBO, Daulat Beg Oldie. This used to take, at one time in the 60s, it used to take days. Then it started taking hours. But with this new road, this 255 kilometer road, what will happen is, it will take just 6 hours.
As China continues to saber-rattle, India's message is clear. There will be no compromise on our integrity and sovereignty.
भारत शांति चाहता है, लेकिन भारत उकसाने पर यथोचित जवाब देने में सक्षम है। और हमारे दिवंगत शहीद वीर जवानों के विषय में देश को इस बात का गर्व होगा कि वे मारते मारते मरे।
On a diplomatic level, the External Affairs Minister has made it clear that the premeditated and planned action by the Chinese to erect structures on the Indian side led to the bloodshed at Galwan Valley. At a time when Chinese aggression has led to global powers isolating China and seeking accountability from the communist regime, the world will have its eyes on India's move, and India is ready to stare back and ensure that China cows down. Let's debate.
Arnab rejoins the panel with Ambassador Stobden, former diplomat, and Prabal Dasgupta, who's both a veteran, army veteran and author of Watershed 1967 on India-China. I'd like to start with you, Prabal. You are fully, cognizant of the military realities on the ground. Okay, one is political, internal, one diplomatic, and now let's talk military. What do you expect China to do going forward? They've not accepted their casualties. They've been very stubborn about it, almost killed the story in their local media. What do you expect them to do going forward?
Thank you, Arnab, for having me on the discussion. To your question, China has historically behaved the same way. They have never accepted casualties, neither in 1967 nor in Doklam when they were pushed back. So I don't expect China, for one, to accept, though I believe the Global Times has come up with a casualty number today. Secondly, I would think at a more, tactical level, this is something that China has done over the last 6 years. If you look at Xi Jinping's tenure of the last 6 years, more number of standoffs have taken place than in the collective 4 decades before that. So I would expect China to probably cow down at the moment. given the aggression of the Indian side, and I think we have given them as good as we've got, and a bloody nose to boot. I think given all of that, China will not accept casualties. I believe, once we've done this, there might be a pushback on the Chinese side, but I would expect China to, it's a long border that we share, 3,488 kilometers, and, Chinese would be, upping their ante and looking to create another issue. There's been Demchok, there's been Chumar, Dipsang, Daulat Beg Oldi, now this one, Ladakh, and I'm sure that there would be, something similar as far as China is concerned. On the strategic level, what I have seen China do is to, take the conflict into a more surrogate level. And that's why you see Nepal and Lipulekh, that's why you see other nations being involved, and even Pakistan from the other end. So I think China is using that at the strategic level, and China would use it more given that there are various other issues arraigned against it, and India is poised to lead a global coalition at that level. I think China will continue its game and will expand the nature of its platform that it wants to engage India in.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from him, Ambassador Stobden, is that China will expand it could make it a multi-location conflict. It could open up other areas. Ambassador Stobden, we've seen a very, very measured, almost no response from the global community, including our friends. Australia, US, Japan, we want to re-engineer the Quad, but there's been no strong vocal statement yet. How do you see that? Do you see them responding? Can we squeeze them diplomatically?
Ultimately, this is not about territory. This is a war about market. And everybody is looking for an opportunity to enter the Indian market. I'm getting calls from a number of Western countries. Please give me the exact position today, what is happening between India and China at the border, because we want to invest a lot in the Indian market. But we want to know what is going to be the future. This conflict will continue. Who is now vitiating the atmosphere for the Western investment in India? Now, clearly it seems that ever since we tried to take a hard position on Chinese investment in Indian market, the Chinese are now trying to vitiate that atmosphere that others should also now should not enter the Indian market. It looks like it's more of an economic game rather than a fight for 1 meter here or 1 meter there. And ultimately, the entire thing will be negotiated. We really do not know after the end of this conflict at Galwan Valley, what would be the Chinese demand? Are they going to bring the economic issues on the table, or will they stick to the military issue about the territory at Pangong Lake and Galwan Lake? Secondly, I understand that this is a reflection of political relationship between India and China going wrong. Please remember that Theater Command, Western Theater Command, either in Xinjiang or in Tibet, is not fully under the control of the political leadership of China. They enjoy autonomy. They cannot put too much pressure on this Western Theater Command. So they act independently, and they have a very focused agenda on the Western front with India. So therefore, I think it's a reflection of political calculation going wrong somewhere. And now the political class cannot, Xi Jinping cannot really put too much pressure on PLA to control the situation.
I'm not so sure of that. I think this is very well calibrated from Beijing. Saurabh was wanting to respond. Yeah, Saurabh. Viewers, at this part, we are only trying to read the Chinese mind and their strategy,
Arnab,
so we can decide our response equally.
But just Arnab, I was there in China at the delegation of the External Affairs Minister last year, and I have a slight disagreement with Ambassador Stobden here.
Yeah.
I see this as a calculated Chinese ploy on 2-3 planks. Number one, they want to reassert their territorial claims. So one, because they realize that they think that India is too preoccupied with the COVID-19 crisis, they will try to push it. That's one. Second, They are rattled by India's proximity to countries like the US, Japan, Australia, UK, and India's rising global clout. Third thing is, I don't see Xi Jinping not being, in the loop on this kind of a thing. Yes, it can be a localized but I don't buy that argument that PLA will be doing something on its own bidding. It is a totalitarian state. PLA has strong linkages with the political leadership.
But Saurabh, at the same time,
PLA runs a lot of economic
but at the same time, I take your question, but I found his observation very keen, Ambassador Stobden, when he said that it could be a deliberate strategy by the Chinese because he said he's receiving a lot of calls. So if you read that, whenever anyone invests billions or millions or billions of dollars in any country and hundreds of billions of dollars, they look at the element of geopolitical risk associated with it. And today that geopolitical risk organizations provide these inputs which global companies take extremely seriously. I'm sure you know of them. So what he's saying is maybe it's a strategy by the Chinese to keep the region hot, to keep India hot. Because if India appears to have very low risk, then it's an attractive investment. So it could just be an attempt to queer the pitch there. Ambassador. Yes, Ambassador.
Question about why our friends are not coming forward to support our view. That is the answer I was providing to Arnab. I'm not making some other stories. I was responding to Arnab's question, why our friends are not saying anything.
Yeah. They're watching it, you're saying. You're saying they are watching it. Right?
Because motivation is something else, not to support India on the war, but to look for market access.
But to look for market access, those visuals on the screen, look at the protests in Hong Kong. China has serious problems of its own. Prabal, from a military perspective, a question I've always wanted some clarity on. I am told that the Chinese are not very field prepared operationally. They haven't fought too many wars and battles. They truly believe in more psychological operations, perceptions of scale, etc. No doubt about their military prowess, but effectiveness on the ground. Could you comment on that? How effective are they on the ground in the context of your first point about us giving them a bloody nose yesterday?
Yes. So that's something that we have seen over the years. If you look at, if I were to take a step back and see when was the last Chinese success, it was in 1962, and that too for failure of political and military leadership at the highest levels in India. But at the ground level, 1962, wherever India has stood and fought, India had given a great account of themselves. So if you look at it, the soldiers that were actually in battles were in the Korean War in 1953. Between 1962 and 1967, China launched a psychological offensive against India. It was only General Sagat and his boys in 1967 that overturned the tide and changed the narrative. However, if you look at it, even today, the Chinese line goes back to the same old, wishy-washy line of we'll give you the lessons of 1962. So China spends a lot of money in propaganda. Let's understand how it operates. The whole propaganda machine, the Global Times, the Chinese machine, propaganda based itself on psychology. And at the ground level, that has been...
Yes, Prabal. I'm sorry, this is getting more and more interesting. But I'll have to call it, call it a day for now. We'll take it forward, viewers. Excellent observations from Ambassador Stobden and Prabal and Saurabh out there. Viewers, stay united, stay strong. And remember, it's Bharat versus China. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Good night. Thank you for watching and goodbye.